Beautiful. If this little guy fast, maybe the pickle on there. Some little granny houses there.
가다가
응?
가다가
왜?
또 가다가
I've still got this roll of film that I'm on and one more roll of film. All the way from Kathmandu.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nepal. My peanut butter bar.
धन्यवाद धन्यवाद
Hi everyone. If you made it this far in the video, thanks for watching. My name is Brody. I'm an avid traveler and I like to document my travels through photography and videography. Hopefully this video gave you a good insight of what it's like to hike the Manaslu circuit in Nepal. The next part of the video will be a brief guide covering what you need to know to hike the Manaslu circuit. Before we get started, just a quick disclaimer. All the information in this video is based on my experience and my opinions. So I'd urge you to go out and conduct your own research and ensure you have the most up-to-date information on things like visas and permits. So with that out of the way, let's get started. Now I hiked the Manaslu circuit between the month of April and May in the year 2022. Now this is considered low season, but I preferred this as there was a lot less people on the trail and in the tea houses. Now if you want to hike in peak season, which is generally better weather, is from September to November. Alright, so first things first, getting there. I'm actually based in Bangkok, Thailand, so I took a flight from Bangkok to Kathmandu, which roughly took around 3 hours. And the only airline that was operating back in May was Nepal Airlines. So we spent several days prior to our hike in Kathmandu, where I'd caught up with my friend Jesse, who'd flown in from Australia. This gave us enough time to see some of the local sites, pick up some last minute items for the trail and get a haircut. We tucked into some local fare. This dal bhat was particularly nice. And this ice cream was delicious, one of the best. So next thing is getting to the trailhead. We actually traveled to Machikola, which is one village up from Sodikola. And there are really two options to get from Kathmandu to Machikola. You can either take a jeep with a group, which cost around $200 USD, or you can opt for the local option, which is 1/20th of the price, which is the public bus. And this bus leaves from Gongabu new bus station, and you should try to get there bright and early because it is a long day. It took around 10 hours, and the last leg of the journey was interesting to say the least. I'll let the video do the talking. Alright, next part is trekking route. This is my old trails. I'll put a link in the description. I went ahead and tracked each day's data, and you can click on the individual days and see a breakdown of the elevation, moving time, and the various other data points. But just to simplify things, I went ahead and created a back-to-back map with all the days noted in alternating colors, and all the acclimatization hikes noted in yellow. So if we zoom out here to give you a better idea of where the circuit is actually located, you can see Kathmandu is here in the southeast corner and Pokhara over in the west. Now if we zoom in, you can see that we conduct the hike in an anti-clockwise fashion around Manaslu Glacier and summit. Now you may be wondering why we only hiked for 10 days when a lot of the material states that the circuit takes anywhere from 12 to 14 days in total to hike. Well, that's because we skipped a acclimatization night at Samogan, and also at the end of the hike, people used to hike to Darapani, but now this is mostly road and you can take a jeep from Tilche. Alright, so this angle shows a better view of the circuit. You can see pretty much we are hiking within the valley itself the whole time. So you're surrounded by mountains on either side, which is pretty magical. And in its entirety, the whole trail that we hiked was 140 kilometers long. And at the start of the hike, we started at an elevation of 800 meters above sea level. And we work our way up to 5,150 meters above sea level at the pass. So I would say the great thing about this circuit is the wide range of altitudes and climates you get to incur. At the start, you're basically hiking through the tropics and jungle. As you move on up to 2,000 meters and above, it becomes more of the alpine zone and you get pine and forest. And then as you get up to 3,000 meters plus, you reach the snow line. So you get to experience a wide range of climates, which is great. Just a few points from my hiking notes. So I think day 1, 2, and 3 are going to be harder than day 4, 5, and 6. And that's because you're hiking longer distances and your body probably isn't going to be used to the hiking routine unless you're an avid hiker. But as long as you can get past day 3, you should be fine. It's only when you start to really hit the altitude above 4,000 meters where your body really starts to feel it. So some other standout points along the trail would be low. This is where you can see the iconic shot of the gate, which is situated here with Manaslu in the background. And if you want a good vantage point to take a photo, I believe it's here where you can get the iconic shot. And you should probably aim to be up early in the morning where there's less cloud. Alright, so moving up the trail, another highlight was Barinjara Lake, which is right next to Samagan. So we woke up bright and early to hike this portion of our acclimatization hike, and we hiked up this side of the ravine all the way up to near the Manaslu base camp. And this was at an elevation of 4,780 meters. I think the weather had turned at that point, so we decided to head back. And by the time we made it down, we decided to take a dip in the lake, which you can see in the video, which was very cold but well worth it after a nice morning hike. So on the same day, we decided to hike all the way up to Samdo, where we spent the night. And the following day, we did a short acclimatization section up this ravine. And you can actually hike all the way to the Tibetan border from here. And this is where we saw the blue sheep. So from Samdo onwards, you're actually above 4,000 meters above sea level. And this is where you'll really start to feel the altitude. You'll probably have a shortness of breath and your pace will slow down, but I would say just listen to your body, pace yourself. If you need an extra acclimatization day at altitude, then take it and you'll be fine. So from here, from Samdo, we hiked up to Dharamsala, which we actually spent the night in the tent, and this is the last village before the pass. So on day 9, we tackled Lake Pass, which is the highest section of the Manaslu circuit, which stands between Dharamsala and Bimtung. Now we were definitely feeling the altitude at this point. Our pace was significantly slower than previous days, but I felt overall we made fairly good pace. We were actually one of the last groups to leave Dharamsala because we had slept through our alarm. So we left around 6 AM, but we made it to the pass just before 11 PM, so under 5 hours. So we probably spent half an hour at the top of the pass getting some photos and just recouping, and then we started the descent, which to me was the harder portion of the day. By that time my knees were a bit tender. Definitely helped having some hiking sticks and micro spikes on the way down. So after a long day and completing the pass and descending around 1,400 meters, we arrived at the picturesque village of Bimtung, where we celebrated the completion of the pass with a beer, a warm shower and a hearty meal. The last day of the trek was day 10, and it was from Bimtung to Tilche, and it was another big day of descending, approximately 1,400 meters. We were passing through a portion of the Annapurna Conservation Area, which was a beautiful wooded forest, and the views were just spectacular. Lots of unique flora and fauna, and a nice way to wrap up the last leg of the journey. So you're probably wondering what sort of items and gear do you need to hike the Manaslu circuit? Well, we actually hiked the circuit without the use of porters, so weight was a consideration. Our packs came out to around 13 kilos each, including all our gear. I would definitely say 13 kilos would be in the upper limit of what you'd want to take in order to hike this hike comfortably. And here you can see an itemized breakdown of what we brought. So first thing being clothing, which is very important because you're going to experience a wide range of conditions when in the mountains. I won't go into too much detail, but you can refer to my spreadsheet, but I essentially use a layering system. So I'd say that some of the essentials would be having a good rain jacket and rain pants to keep you dry and away from the wind, having some good base layer and thermals to keep you warm, some quick dry shirts, long sleeve and short sleeve, a good hat and buff to keep the sun away from you, a nice warm beanie and some gloves for when it gets cold, and be sure to invest in some quality socks. A wool blend from a reputable company will do the job. It's going to save you a lot of heartache and blisters. And footwear is also a very personal thing, but I would say bring something that you're going to be comfortable walking long distances in, that you've broken in prior to the trip, and that's going to provide you with enough support and protection from the elements. In terms of toiletries, I pretty much bought all your basic essentials such as toothpaste, moisturizer, body wash in travel size portions. With medication, I bought ibuprofen, water purification tablets, antifungal cream, antihistamines, anti-inflammatories. And last of all, I think one of the most important thing is a good lip balm and moisturizer, because your skin does dry out once you get up to elevation with the cold. I also bought a bunch of multivitamins to keep my immune system in check whilst on the trail, as well as ginkgo biloba, which I've heard helps with altitude acclimatization, and Diamox for altitude sickness. So next thing is equipment. I took a Montbell 40 litre backpack, which was the perfect size, as well as hiking poles and micro spikes I think are essentials. A good pair of sunglasses. When you get up into the snow line, it gets very bright. So we opted not to bring sleeping bags because of the size and weight. Instead we brought sleeping liners, which we used to cover all the sheets and pillows at all the villages, which I think worked well and was a good compromise. In terms of other equipment, bringing a good headlamp for when you're hiking in the dark or simply running out to the bathroom at the night. We brought water filters. At the start we were purifying all our water, but by the end of the trip I was just using the tablets and didn't have any issues. Having some simple rope to rig up as a clothesline was also very handy for when we were washing our clothes and wanted to dry them. Having a 1 litre water bottle should be enough capacity to tie you over between tea houses. And having a day pack is also a good option when you want to do day hikes or just venture around the village during the daytime and you don't want to take your big pack. So in terms of camera gear and the gear that I used to shoot this video, I brought along a Fuji X-T3 with 4 batteries, a Fuji XF 10-24 f4 lens, which was my only lens that I brought, a Sennheiser MKE 440 microphone, a carbon fiber tripod, as well as a DJI Air 2S drone with 3 batteries, a Samsung S20 phone, and all the chargers needed to power my drone and camera. So all in all, this was around 5 kilos in weight, which made up the majority of the weight of my pack. I could have probably gotten away with taking 1 less drone battery, seeing that there was locations that I could charge most of the way. But I think overall this equipment setup was perfect for me, quite minimal, and had everything I needed. Jesse was also using a Fuji camera system, so I borrowed his XF 70-300mm, which was awesome to get some close-up shots. So next we'll cover cost. You're probably wondering what are the costs involved to hike the Manaslu circuit. Well, I'll go through an itemized breakdown of each. So first, for permits, you'll need a restricted area permit, which costs $75 because you'll be passing through some areas that are restricted along the circuit. You need an ACAP permit, which stands for Annapurna, and an MCAP permit, which is the Manaslu Conservation Area permit. You'll actually be passing through the Annapurna region on the end of the trail. And in total, this was $93. The fees for your permit will vary depending on the time of year you're going, whether it's low season or high season, as well as the duration of your hike. I'll put a breakdown below of the fees and time of year. You'll need a tour agency to actually apply for these permits, which cost us, in our case, $75. Insurance is mandatory to get the visas, and you need to be sure that it includes emergency evacuation by helicopter. On the daily, we saw people getting evacuated, and you don't want to be stuck out in the middle of nowhere without a way out. The price of travel insurance will differ depending on where your provider is based. Mine was around $60 USD and I applied with Allianz here in Thailand. You'll also need a Nepalese visa to enter Nepal depending on what country you're from. I applied for mine at the Nepalese embassy here in Bangkok and it was $50 USD. And for the Manaslu circuit, currently it's mandatory that you need a guide in order to hike the circuit, as well as an additional hiking partner. So in this instance, our guide Udaya was $30 per day. In total, we hiked 10 days plus 2 days of transit, so it was $360 in total, which we split between us, being $180 each. And in addition, if you want a porter, it's going to be an extra $15 per day, and they can carry anywhere from 10 to 15 kilos. So accommodation and food is another point you have to consider, but the general rule of thumb is the more remote the village is, the more you have to spend for the same items. These prices include both accommodation and food, and all in all we spent around $170 for the entire trip for 10 days. So I think this would probably be around the average spend of most people. Every now and then we indulged in some chocolate, some beer, some Roxy, but I'm sure you could spend a lot less or a lot more either way. Depends on how you want to travel. In terms of the quality of the food, it's actually quite impressive of the number of items that they can whip up at remote locations at altitude. I would say the safe bet is to go with dal bhat. It's very filling, hearty and tasty and unique at every village. And you can eat as much as you want and they'll keep topping you up. In terms of what the accommodation was like, it's pretty bare bones accommodation, but it got the job done. We slept in a whole range of different options. Everything from pretty much a tin shed to a tent to a nice cottage. And I think overall you can't be too picky of the accommodation options, and it adds to the whole remoteness and journey of the trip. So last of all is transport. As I mentioned before, we took the bus from Kathmandu to Machi Kola, and this was $8 in total. And at the end of the trail from Tilche to Besi Sahara, we took a jeep. There were some other villages that happened to be going, but generally you can wait around here and hitch a ride with other hikers. And the jeep ride itself was quite spectacular. You get to see a lot of stunning scenery while exiting out the valley. So the total cost of the jeep was around $80 divided by 4, so around $20 each. And from Besi Sahara, we took a bus to Pokhara, which was around $4.60. So in total, transport was around $90. You could spend a lot more than this if you took private jeeps everywhere, but I was glad that we opted for the local experience, at least on the way there. So that pretty much covers most of the major costs involved in hiking the Manaslu circuit. We spent just under $800. So keep in mind, the price of hiring some porters aren't included in this total because we didn't hire any. And also we hiked a few days less than most itineraries. But I think a good ballpark figure would be anywhere from $1,000 USD to $1,400, depending if you're going to get porters and private jeeps. That's if you're not going with an all-inclusive package from a tour provider. And I think overall this trip represents great value and it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. If you're debating whether or not to hike the Manaslu circuit, I couldn't recommend it enough. The circuit itself is only going to get more and more popular as time goes on, so now's the perfect time to go. So the last part of this guide are some tips I picked up along the way, and I would say this first one, being one of the most important, is your fitness. Hiking the Manaslu circuit was probably intermediate to hard, very physically taxing at times, so you're going to need to have some level of fitness in order to hike it comfortably. Now I'd say at least 2 or 3 months before you're scheduled to hike is to work on your cardio as well as muscle groups that you're going to need when hiking. And if you happen to live in a flat urban environment such as myself, my training pretty much consisted of me hopping on the treadmill on incline with a weighted pack, walking upstairs, as well as taking long hikes around my neighborhood around 10 or 15 kilometers with the pack on. If you're fortunate enough to live in a mountainous region, doing some hikes at altitude will definitely help. So any groundwork that you can do on your fitness prior to trekking will ensure that the trek is more enjoyable and you can be more focused on your surroundings and taking it all in rather than your fitness. Now I think tip number 2 is put some time and effort into finding the right guide for your group. I think having a good guide can really elevate your trip, and it's worth putting some time into. So after speaking to some prospective guides on mainly Facebook, we landed on Udaya, who happens to be a fellow videographer and photographer, and he was able to show us a bunch of amazing locations to take pictures and video. Not only that, he's such a fun and friendly guy to be around and is now one of our good friends. I'll leave a link to his Instagram below, as well as his tour company, Explore Hub Nepal. I'd also like to give a shout out to my hiking partner and good friend Jesse, who helped contribute some of the photos for this guide and recap. He even shot some of the trip on film. So that's pretty much it, guys. Thanks for watching. I hope you found this brief overview and guide helpful. Hopefully it gave you a bit of inspiration, and if you're planning to hike this circuit or have already done so and watched this video, I'd be really interested to know how your experience was, so please comment down below. I try to keep this guide quite brief, but if you do need any more information, I'll leave a link to my Instagram below where you can DM me and I'll try to assist with any information you may need. So until next time guys, stay safe, happy trekking, and all the best.